God's chosen ones. Heaven paused everything for you. Chosen one. This moment is not an accident. If these words have found their way to your ears, then heaven itself has pressed pause on everything around you just to deliver this message. You are not here by chance. You are not scrolling by coincidence. You are standing on the edge of a divine appointment, and all of eternity has exhaled just to make room for this encounter. You have been searching quietly, desperately, not always with words, but in the aching of your chest when no one's watching, in the moments when you felt invisible, when it seemed like no one could hear your prayers, not even God. And yet, here you are, being addressed directly, as if heaven has dialed your number, because it has. You are a chosen one. That means your timeline is different. Your development is different. Your delays were not denials, they were divine calibrations. When others seemed to rise ahead of you, when opportunities slipped through your fingers like mist, you wondered if God had forgotten you. But the truth is far more profound. God was preserving you, hiding you, protecting your becoming. Beloved, you've been feeling the pull, haven't you? The restlessness in your spirit, the dreams that won't die, the sense that you were made for more. That is not delusion. That is your destiny knocking. Your soul is responding to the sound of heaven calling your name. And today is the day you begin to awaken. Understand this. When heaven chooses someone, the whole realm of darkness takes notice. You are not just gifted. You are dangerous to the agenda of darkness. Your mere presence dismantles what the enemy has tried to build for generations. You wonder why life has felt like a war zone. Because you are the battlefield. You are the shift. You are the divine interruption that your bloodline has been waiting for. So pay attention. This is sacred. The fact that you're hearing this confirms what you've suspected all along. God has been speaking, even in the silence. And now, He's confirming it with clarity. You're not being overlooked. You're being prepared. The enemy tried to drown you in self-doubt, tried to convince you that you were average, unworthy, unremarkably. But what he didn't realize is that every time you questioned yourself, you actually drew closer to God. Every time you cried out, heaven recorded your resilience. Every broken piece of your life became a stone in the altar God was building through you. Chosen one. Look around. This message isn't for the masses. It's not viral for a reason. It was coded for your soul, your spirit, your eyes only. You've been marked by heaven. You've been called out by name. And now, the anointing resting on you is beginning to stir. You've been waking up in the night, haven't you? Sensing something shifting in the unseen. That's because heaven has issued a summons. The scroll of your destiny is being unsealed. God is getting ready to do something through you that will alter not just your life, but the atmosphere around you. This isn't hype. This is holy. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to be silent. You were never meant to go unnoticed. You've been in training, in hiding, in formation. And now, the time has come to emerge. You are a divine weapon, a living declaration of God's power in the earth. And the enemy is terrified of what will happen when you finally realize just how dangerous you are to him. So let this be your confirmation. You are not forgotten. You are not random. You are chosen. You are appointed. You are rising. And if you feel this word in your bones, if something inside you just said yes, this is for me, then don't hesitate. Comment 777 below to declare, this message was meant for me. I receive it. I step into my calling. And if this message is unlocking something deep within your spirit, then make sure you're connected for every word heaven pours out. Subscribe now. Like this video. Share it with another chosen one. Comment boldly. Let the enemy hear your agreement with heaven, because this is just the beginning. But let's go deeper, because this isn't just about encouragement. This is a commissioning. You've walked through pain that should have made you bitter, but instead, it made you deeper. You've suffered losses that should have broken you, but instead, they built you. You've endured long nights of loneliness, confusion, and spiritual silence. Not because God abandoned you, but because He was refining you in secret, so that when He finally revealed you, there would be no confusion about where your strength came from. Everything you've been through was training for what's ahead. The betrayal, it taught you discernment. The delay, it taught you trust. The isolation, it taught you how to stand alone without shrinking. The spiritual warfare, it taught you to call down heaven with a whisper. Now look around. There are people in your life who feel drawn to you, but they don't know why. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere without even trying. That's not charisma. That's calling. That's the weight of glory you carry. That's the residue of anointing. You don't even have to speak. Sometimes the light in your eyes preaches louder than 1,000 sermons. And maybe you've doubted it. Maybe you've looked at others and thought, I'm not like them. I don't fit their mold. You're right. You don't. Because you were never meant to replicate their assignment, you were meant to disrupt it. You're not a copy. You're a blueprint. Heaven gave you a pattern. And now God is calling you to walk it out boldly. This isn't a time to shrink. This isn't a time to doubt. This isn't a time to keep your head down and hope the storm passes. This is the time to rise. Because everything that tried to bury you didn't realize you were a seed. And now the rain is falling, and the soil is breaking. And what was once hidden is about to burst forth with unstoppable glory. Let the world say what it wants. Let the enemy throw his lies. You've been validated by heaven, and no force of darkness can undo what God has already spoken over you. You were born for this, God's chosen one. Let's tell the truth that's been echoing in your heart since childhood. You've never truly fit in. Not with family, not with friends, not even in rooms where you were celebrated. There's always been a lingering whisper inside of you. I'm different. I'm not like them. And that whisper, it wasn't insecurity. It was revelation. From an early age, you sensed things others didn't. You noticed what went unspoken. You felt the tension in a room without anyone saying a word. You saw through masks, heard behind words, and carried emotions that weren't even yours. You were sensitive, but not weak. What people called too much was actually spiritual perception in raw form. You weren't being dramatic. You were discerning. You were chosen. And because of that, life rarely gave you the luxury of blending in, while others laughed carelessly. You carried burdens. While others coasted, you wrestled. While they belonged, you observed. God never let you settle in comfort, because comfort dulls calling. He didn't let you get too attached to places He never intended to keep you in. There's a reason you couldn't stay where others camped. You were called to move mountains, not décorat-temps. You tried, didn't you? You tried to play the role, to shrink your light, to dull your edge. You tried to blend in so you wouldn't be misunderstood. But the more you conformed, the more you lost your fire. And the fire, chosen one, was never meant to be hidden. It was placed inside you to disturb the darkness, not negotiate with it. You've walked through seasons where no one understood you, where even your closest companions couldn't grasp your depth, where your vision made people uncomfortable. That's because God placed a mantle on you that others weren't equipped to carry. They weren't supposed to get it. Your calling requires isolation for clarification. God had to separate you so you could see yourself the way He sees you, without distortion, without competition, without comparison. And you've asked, why me? Why this path? Why the loneliness, the heaviness, the constant pressure? Because you are not common, because you are not replaceable, because you are a divine disruption in a world drunk on sameness. Heaven doesn't raise up chosen ones to be echoes. Heaven raises up chosen ones to be voices, loud ones, distinct ones, voices that shift atmospheres, break strongholds, and speak life into dry bones. You've never belonged because you've been set apart. In Jeremiah 1, God declares, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." That verse isn't poetry for you. It's your biography. Before your first breath, your assignment was written, and everything you've felt since has been evidence of that assignment unfolding. But let's pause here, because the enemy tried to turn your uniqueness into a wound. He tried to make you believe that your difference was a defect, that your sense of not belonging meant you were broken, that your calling was confusion, that your sensitivity was weakness, that your vision was delusion. And for a while, maybe you believed him. Maybe you doubted yourself. Maybe you wished you were like everyone else. But chosen one, what the enemy meant for shame, God is turning into glory. Every tear you cried over not being accepted, heaven counted them as intercession. Every lonely night you endured, God was drawing near. Every time you felt like an outsider, you were actually being marked as an insider in heaven's blueprint. Your life hasn't followed a linear path because your calling isn't linear. It's layered, prophetic, multi-dimensional. That's why some doors shut without warning. That's why some relationships crumbled without explanation. God wasn't punishing you. He was positioning you. Let me speak this clearly. You don't belong where others settle because your roots were made for higher ground. And I know it hurts to be different. It hurts when your kindness is mistaken for weakness, when your dreams are laughed at, when your silence is misinterpreted. But every ache, every misstep, every misunderstanding was a divine setup to push you deeper into your identity. And now that identity is rising, you are not just chosen to survive, you are chosen to lead, to break chains, to release captives, to declare freedom in places where bondage once ruled. People have tried to define you by their limited understanding. They've labeled you, misread you, underestimated you. But heaven never needed their permission to anoint you. God didn't consult man when he formed your destiny, and he's not asking them now. So stop waiting for their validation. Walk in your authority. This is your confirmation. You're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not wrong for feeling like an outlier. You are called. You are set apart. You are God's hidden weapon. And now, the same God who allowed you to feel different is revealing why you had to be. When you step into rooms from now on, walk with the confidence of someone who was hand-selected by heaven, because you were God's chosen one. You've often felt the pressure, an invisible heaviness that follows you even on ordinary days. It's not depression. It's not anxiety. It's the weight of a hidden calling. The sense that your life is not your own. that something greater has been assigned to you, even when you can't explain it to others. This is the burden of those heaven sets apart. It presses on your chest, not to crush you, but to awaken you. You've lived most of your life under spiritual tension. That's not your imagination, it's divine intention. You've been in training while others were relaxing. You've been fighting silent battles while others celebrated surface victories. The hiddenness hasn't been punishment, it's been preparation. And that preparation, though quiet, has been holy. Do you remember all those times you felt like you were being overlooked? When you gave, and gave, and gave, and received nothing in return. That wasn't a coincidence. God was guarding your name. He was keeping your oil away from hands that would waste it. He was shaping your soul in the wilderness, away from applause, away from clout, away from distraction. There is a sacred silence in your story, a hush that the world mistook for absence. But it was God building depth. People saw your surface and assumed they knew your story. But they didn't see the nights you wept. They didn't hear the prayers that had no words. They didn't watch you lay your dreams on an invisible altar. Not once, but over and over again. They didn't walk with you through the loss, the betrayal, the emptiness. But God did, and He recorded every moment. Chosen one. Some people are developed in public, but not you. You were developed in secret, in the stillness, in the shadows, in the spaces where only angels witnessed your growth. While the world applauded the loud and the visible, God was investing His power in your silence. And now the silence is breaking. The weight you've felt is the pressure of destiny forming. It's the gravity of being anointed for impact. That's why small talk tires you. That's why shallow spaces suffocate you. That's why you've always longed for something more. Because your spirit remembers what your mind is just now, catching up to you are chosen for something beyond the natural. You've sensed it in your bones, this deep inner knowing that won't go away. You've felt God's hand on your shoulder, even when no one else affirmed you. And though you've questioned your worth, though you've doubted your voice, something always pulled you back into position. That something was God, and that voice, that was your mantle whispering, "We're not finished yet." But hear this clearly. Your hidden season is not wasted. It is weight-bearing. Every moment you stayed faithful in silence added strength to your voice. Every time you showed up when no one noticed, you were increasing your spiritual volume. Every act of obedience in obscurity was a rehearsal for influence. You are being unveiled, not revealed prematurely. It's why doors didn't open when you asked. It's why you lost people you wanted to keep. It's why certain platforms rejected you. Because God was protecting the weight of your calling from the lightness of clout. People don't understand that kind of depth. They assume silence means stagnation. But you've been growing roots. And roots take time. They grow in the dark, under pressure, unseen. But they hold up kingdoms. And you, chosen one, are a kingdom carrier. So if you've felt heavy lately, if you've been walking with the sense that something is coming, but you can't quite explain it, that's your spirit recognizing transition. The cocoon is breaking, and the wings God has been forming are unfolding. You're about to step into rooms that were designed for your voice. You're about to pray prayers that shift atmospheres. You're about to walk in power that silences confusion. But you must trust the weight. Don't resent it. Don't run from it. Don't try to throw it off prematurely. This is not pressure meant to break you. It's presence meant to form you. Remember how David wasn't even invited to the ceremony when Samuel came to anoint the next king. He was in the field, forgotten by man, but chosen by God. And when the oil wouldn't flow for the brothers, it waited for David. That's you. The oil is waiting for you. Others may have titles. They may have platforms. But heaven has the final word. And God is saying, now is the time. And if you've ever felt the weight I'm describing, if you've carried it in silence, if you've wondered why life has always felt spiritually heavier for you, declare it now. Comment 888 below and type, the weight is real, but so is the calling. I receive it, because the season of silence is ending, and the sound of your assignment is beginning. God's chosen one. Let's revisit the moments that hurt the most, not to dwell in the pain, but to extract the purpose. There were people who laughed at your dreams. They called you too ambitious, too intense, too deep. You may have brushed it off, smiled politely, and moved on. But deep down, it bruised you. It made you wonder, is there something wrong with me? And that question lingered like a shadow over your identity. But now, let the truth rise and shatter every lie that's clung to your name. Their rejection was divine protection, what you called abandonment. Heaven called alignment. Every door that slammed shut in your face was a signal from God that what they were building couldn't hold what you carry. You don't need to be bitter to be free, but you do need to recognize the blessing in the betrayal. Because if they hadn't mocked you, you might have stayed. If they hadn't underestimated you, you might have shrunk. If they hadn't closed that door, you might have wasted years trying to earn validation where there was only venom. Some of the most painful no's in your life were actually God saying, not here, not with them, not under that roof. And now, as you look back, you can begin to see it. The conversations that turned cold, the sudden distance, the moments when you gave your best and were still dismissed. None of it was random. None of it was wasted. It was all redirection. You see, a chosen one cannot build destiny on unstable foundations. God had to shake everything that could be shaken: friendships, jobs, plans, even your own expectations, so that what remains is only what was appointed. You weren't rejected because you lacked something. You were rejected because you carried something too weighty for where you were. It wasn't that you were too much. It's that you were too anointed to be contained in places built for comfort. You were designed for impact. And impact doesn't happen in echo chambers. It happens in the wilderness, in rejection, in the refining fire of isolation. God didn't allow those moments to happen to break your heart. He allowed them to protect your oil. There were people who wanted access to your favor, but not to your process. They wanted your strength, but not your scars. Your ideas, but not your insight. And God said no, because where you're going, you can't take counterfeits. Let that settle. The silence you received from some people was their inability to digest the weight of your destiny. Don't fault them. Just release them. What you carry would have crushed them, and keeping them close would have delayed your breakthrough. You weren't made to blend in. You were made to break through. And every laugh they laughed, every time they told you to tone it down, every conversation where they rolled their eyes when you brought up your vision, those were heaven's cues. Not to quit, but to keep going. Not to water down, but to rise up. Because chosen one, there is no honor in being accepted where God never sent you. There is no peace in shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone. God wired you for more. He wired you with boldness, with vision, with insight that unsettles those content with shadows. You've felt like a misfit because you were made to be a miracle. Misfits don't just break the mold, they build a new one. So instead of asking, why did they leave? Ask instead, what was heaven protecting? Because the spaces you've been excluded from will never compare to the spaces God is preparing you for. The stage God is building won't require you to shrink, to beg, or to explain. You will simply be, and those who once laughed will be silenced by the fruit of your faith. And when that day comes, and it will, you won't need revenge. Your obedience will speak for itself. So, stand tall. Even when misunderstood, walk forward. Even when unsupported, speak boldly. Even when silenced, God's chosen one. You've been through the kind of breaking that few ever survive. The kind that doesn't just shake your plans but shakes your identity. The kind that strips away everything you thought you needed, until all you had left was the breath in your lungs and a whisper of faith in your soul. But hear this. The breaking was not your ending, it was your birthing. What looked like failure was God digging foundations for something weightier. What looked like betrayal was heaven severing ties that couldn't carry your promise. What looked like silence was God drawing near in a way you didn't recognize. The breaking didn't come to ruin you. It came to release you. You were never meant to stay hidden forever. But the version of you that God is revealing now, bold, healed, refined, untouchable, could only be born through fire. And fire does not destroy gold. It reveals it. Every setback that crushed your plans actually protected your purpose. You cried over what you thought was lost, not realizing that God was removing what would have diluted your oil. You grieved people who left, not knowing they were never meant to witness your next chapter. And now, in the aftermath of your breaking, heaven is positioning you to rise not as who you used to be, but as who you truly are. This is resurrection. When Jesus went to the cross, it looked like loss. It looked like the end of the story. But resurrection doesn't come without crucifixion. Glory doesn't come without groaning. And you, chosen one, have groaned in the secret place. You have bled in silence. But your resurrection has begun. There is something unexplainable about you now. A stillness, a knowing, a divine confidence that no longer depends on applause. That's because you've died to what no longer serves your future. You no longer beg for tables you were sent to flip. You no longer chase rooms that reject the weight of your presence. You've stopped explaining your anointing to people who only want access, not accountability. This is what being reborn in purpose feels like. You lost the job and found your voice. You lost the title and found your authority. You lost the circle and found your calling. God doesn't birth mantles in the spotlight. He births them in caves, in confusion, in crushing moments of why, Lord. And the moment you stopped fighting the breaking, the moment you let go and said, your will, not mine, that was the moment heaven began rebuilding you with fire in your bones. You no longer move like a victim of your past. You move like a steward of revelation. You know now what pain taught you. You carry discernment that only long nights can give. You walk with an edge, sharpened by warfare. And that's why the enemy fears you now more than ever, because you didn't just survive. You transformed. This is your rise, and it will not be rushed, but it will be recognized. People who once saw you as broken will now wonder how you radiate peace. They'll ask how you keep getting back up. They'll whisper about your strength, your glow, your boldness, and they'll never understand the truth. You were made in the breaking, God doesn't waste pain. He weaves it into prophecy. And every wound you endured in private is about to become a well for others to draw from. You are not just being elevated, you are being commissioned. You are not just stepping out, you are being sent. This is not about fame. This is about function. Heaven is assigning you new authority because you finally surrendered to the breaking that birthed the mantle. And if it still hurts good, that's a sign you're still growing. That's a sign the birthing isn't over. Don't run from it. Don't numb it. Let it purify. Let it clarify. Let it remind you that what God builds from brokenness can't be shaken by man. Chosen one. The world has seen enough performative power. It's time for those who carry authentic weight. And you, bruised and blazing with glory, have been chosen to carry what others dropped when it got too heavy. And now, if you feel this word deep in your bones, don't just consume it, respond to it. Subscribe to stay under this flow. Like, share, and comment if you know the breaking has shaped you. Let the world know. I was broken, but now I'm born in fire. Because your voice isn't coming from theory. It's coming from the ashes. And ashes don't lie. God's chosen one. Let's talk about the fire. Not the kind you danced around in praise, but the kind that scorched your hope. The fire that burned through your plans, your relationships, your comfort zones. The one that made you question if God had forgotten your name. But you didn't burn. You survived. And that survival isn't something to gloss over. It's not something to file away and forget. That survival is proof of the anointing on your life. You walked through fire, and everything that wasn't ordained for your future fell away in the flames. The Bible doesn't say, if you go through fire. It says when Isaiah 43:2 declares, when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. That wasn't poetic comfort, it was prophetic guarantee. God knew the fire was coming, and he knew what would be left when it passed. You refined, not ruined. Some people only know the God of peace, but you've met the God of the furnace, the one who showed up in the middle of your chaos, not to pull you out immediately, but to prove that even inside the heat, you are not alone. You felt his presence more in the fire than you ever did in calm waters. And now you understand. The fire didn't come to destroy you. It came to reveal what's eternal in you. Others see your calm now and assume you've had an easy journey. But you know better. That calm is forged steel. That peace is battle won. That patience is born of waiting on a promise that took years to even whisper back. You were crushed, but not consumed. You were bent, but not broken. You were burned, but not buried. Why? Because what God placed inside of you is fireproof. You've been shaped by heat, tempered in adversity, and you carry an edge that can't be dulled by public opinion or petty attacks. You walk differently now, not with arrogance, but with authority, not with ego, but with evidence. The enemy tried everything. He sent confusion to your mind, division to your home, disappointment to your dreams, and still you're here, still standing, still praying, still listening for God's voice when everyone else tuned out. That makes you a threat. Because people who survive that kind of fire don't just walk out, they rise up. You carry revelation in your scars now. You don't just quote scriptures, you embody them. You don't just preach deliverance, you've lived it. That's why demons tremble when you speak. That's why atmospheres shift when you enter. You're not just another voice, you are a fire-tested vessel. Let others chase platforms. Let them run after applause. You're not after any of that. You're after presence. You've tasted what it's like to need God more than air. And now that you've been through the furnace, you'll never settle for lukewarm again. Some people still treat you like the version of you before the fire. But that version is gone. That version died in the furnace. The version that remains, refined, resolute, unapologetically chosen, and what's ahead of you, glory, not because you earned it, but because you endured. God doesn't forget those who walk through fire and still call him holy. He doesn't overlook those who lose everything and still lift their hands in surrender. You've graduated spiritually, emotionally, prophetically. What used to shake you now teaches you. What used to threaten you now fuels you. What used to tempt you now bores you. Because the fire burned away the excess, and what remains is unshakable. And now, let this truth anchor you. You will never be the same again. The fire left its mark not to shame you, but to set you apart. You are a burning testimony, a walking altar, and wherever you go from here, the flame within you will light the way for others. If your spirit bears witness to this, if you feel the heat and remember the journey, declare it with courage. Comment 444 below and type, "The fire didn't consume me, it crowned me. I carry proof." Let hell know you're still here. Let heaven hear your yes again. Let the world see the glow that only fire produces. Because what's next will not come to you because you're popular. It will come through you because you're proven. God's chosen one. Have you ever questioned why you were born into that family? Why your childhood carried more weight than wonder? Why, while others ran carefree, you were navigating emotional landmines? The pain you inherited wasn't just random, it was placement with purpose. You were divinely planted, not punished. God didn't put you in that household to crush you. He sent you there to shift it, to interrupt patterns that had gone unchallenged for generations. You weren't just a child in that home, you were a light placed in the center of a long-standing storm. Yes, it was hard. Yes, you felt unseen, unheard, misunderstood. But you were never unwanted by heaven. In fact, you were the most watched, the most guarded, because what heaven placed on your life, hell saw before you ever did. And it tried to extinguish your fire through trauma, through dysfunction, through generational chaos. But the fact that you're still standing proves that God's plan outranked every plot sent to silence you. You were born into cycles, but you were never meant to repeat them. That's why you never fit in. That's why you couldn't agree with the same bitterness, the same mindsets, the same limitations. That's why something inside you broke every time you were told, "That's just how it is." No, not for you. Because you were chosen to be the interruption, the repairer of the breach, the breaker of curses, the one who would rise up and say, "This ends with me." And it hasn't been easy, because breaking patterns means facing resistance, spiritual, emotional, even relational. You've had to fight for your peace in places that called your peace rebellion. You've had to fight for your joy in atmospheres that normalized pain. And you've had to fight to remember who you are when everyone around you only reminded you of who they thought you were. But in all that wrestling, God was shaping you, strengthening your spine, sharpening your discernment, building compassion in you that no book could teach. You are not soft. You are sacred. You are not weak. You are wired for war. You may not have come from royalty, but you're walking like one now. You may not have inherited wealth, but you've inherited wisdom. And that wisdom is going to feed nations, not just your family line, but spiritual sons and daughters who will rise because you refuse to fall. They told you to stay quiet. You grew a voice. They told you to be grateful for scraps. You grew vision. They told you love must be earned. You learned to receive it freely from the Father. God used the very soil they thought would bury you to root your mantle. And now, you're no longer surviving your past. You're building something new from it. The wounds have become wells. The pain has become prophecy. The dysfunction has become discernment. You don't even hate your history anymore, because now you see it was never about the pain. It was always about the purpose beneath it. There are people in your family line who never got free. You will. There are dreams your ancestors never had permission to dream. You will dream them and build them. There is joy your bloodline has never experienced. You will dance in it and pass it down. Chosen one, God placed you exactly where the chain was weakest, so you could be the one to break it. And no, they may not thank you. They may not see it. But heaven does. And the impact of your yes will ripple through generations. So take a breath. Lift your head. You're not just a survivor of your family, you are the prophet who will redeem its name, not by being perfect, but by being obedient, by loving when it's hard, by healing what you didn't break, by becoming what no one modeled for you. That's the call. That's the weight. That's the glory. And you're walking in it. God's chosen one. Let's talk about the war you didn't start, but were born into. The one that's followed you from childhood, through every season, through every decision. The one that no one warned you about, because most people didn't even see it. But you felt it, in your bones, in your dreams, in the silence between prayers. You've been under spiritual pressure for years, and you didn't always know why. Things went wrong that shouldn't have. People turned against you without cause. Opportunities fell apart at the last minute, and every time you got close to peace, something tried to steal it again. Let me tell you plainly, the enemy watched you survive what should have taken you out, and now he's terrified. You didn't just endure pain, you became a weapon forged by it. You didn't just walk through attacks, you learned how to hear from heaven in the middle of the chaos. While others were numbing themselves with distractions, you were in the trenches, learning the language of spiritual war. You were being trained to recognize deception, to pray with precision, to fight with worship. You weren't paranoid. You were prophetic. You weren't weak. You were being awakened. There's a reason your life has attracted so much opposition. It's not because you're cursed, it's because you're called. The enemy saw your future before you did. He saw your anointing and said, "We have to stop that one early." But every time you stumbled, you rose higher. Every time you cried, your spirit grew stronger. Every lie he told you just drove you deeper into truth. And now you're dangerous, because you know who you are. You've been through too much to entertain shallow living. You've lost too much to waste time explaining your calling. You're not moved by noise anymore. You're led by discernment. The warfare that once confused you now makes sense. You see the patterns. You see the assignment. You see how every fiery dart was actually preparing your hands to wield a sword. What used to make you cry now makes you rise. What used to take you out now takes you deeper into the presence of God. What used to bind you has become your testimony. Chosen one. This is not just survival. This is strategy. Heaven has watched you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, not just once, but over and over, and still believe, still trust, still lift your hands in worship. And because of that, your life has become a divine threat to everything unclean that tried to claim you. Every time you said yes to God, something in the enemy's camp broke. Every time you forgave, heaven moved. Every time you gave when it hurt. Every time you loved through betrayal. Every time you worshipped through tears, you weren't just surviving. You were winning battles in realms you couldn't see. And now, the evidence is showing up in your life. The peace that doesn't make sense. The favor that follows you into rooms. The clarity in your decisions. The protection you didn't even know you needed. It's all fruit from wars you fought when no one was looking. You're not here by luck. You're not here by coincidence. You're here because you kept standing, and it's not over. There are still battles ahead, but now you're equipped. Now you fight from victory, not for it. Now you recognize the enemy before he strikes. And now you carry the kind of authority that shakes foundations. So walk with your head high, not in pride, but in prophetic confidence. You've been through what few could endure. You've seen darkness try to smother your light, and still you shine. You've become the one hell couldn't kill, the one doubt couldn't silence, the one fear couldn't break. God didn't choose someone perfect. He chose you because you'd survive the fire and come out carrying revelation. This isn't the end of your story. This is the chapter where you begin fighting, not for yourself, but for others. For those who haven't yet learned what you now carry in your spirit. And as you fight, never forget, the one who called you is still with you. The same God who held you through the darkest night will lead you into the brightest dawn. You've made it this far not to collapse, but to conquer. God's chosen one. You've asked this quietly so many times. Am I too late? You've looked at your life, the things that didn't happen when you thought they would. You've watched others rise while you waited in silence. You've seen people with less fire, less oil, less obedience, walk into opportunities you prayed for. And deep down, that question haunted you. Did I miss it? Let this be the answer that silences every whisper of delay. You are not late. You are right on time. Heaven has a timeline that doesn't bow to clocks. The world runs on calendars, but God runs on kairos, divine timing. And what you thought was delay has actually been divine development. You've been hidden. Not because you were unworthy, but because you were not ready for what's next until now. Look at nature. The most powerful things are formed in hiddenness. Diamonds under pressure, seeds in soil, children in the womb. And you, chosen one, you've been forming in obscurity for a reason. Because the magnitude of what you carry can't be rushed. If God had released you too soon, the weight of your mantle would have crushed you instead of covering you. He's been protecting you from false platforms, from premature exposure, from people who wanted your gift, but not your soul. And now, the season is shifting. The fog is lifting. The silence is breaking. The pace is accelerating. Where you once crawled, you will now fly. Where you once were ignored, you will now be announced. What once felt like endless preparation will now give birth to visible manifestation. And it's not just going to be public, it's going to be prophetic. People will look and say, where did they come from? But heaven knows. You've been in the wilderness, in prayer, in silence, in pain. And now you emerge. Let me tell you this plainly. Your reveal has been scheduled. The heavens are aligned. The Spirit is ready, and everything you thought was lost is about to be redeemed with interest. This isn't just a comeback, it's a confirmation. And no, you're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're not overlooked. You are exactly where heaven intended you to be in this very moment. You needed the wilderness. You needed the delay. You needed to lose the things you once clung to so tightly, because if they had stayed, you wouldn't be ready for what's about to open. God never wastes obedience. He never forgets faithfulness. And now, He's about to honor every silent yes you gave when no one was watching. There are doors about to open that you didn't knock on, invitations you didn't chase, favor you didn't earn but were born for. And when it happens, you won't feel surprised. You'll feel aligned, because your spirit has known this was coming, even when your mind couldn't see it. But let me say this clearly. Do not doubt the speed of God. What took years in the past can shift in days. Where you waited long before, you'll walk through quickly now. Don't resist the acceleration. Don't downplay your arrival. Don't apologize for the favor falling on your life. This is what obedience births. And when it happens, people will ask for your secret. They'll assume you networked, marketed, positioned yourself. You'll smile and remember the nights of crying out, the mornings of unanswered prayer, the days of trusting without clarity, because this moment isn't a result of performance, it's the harvest of process. Chosen one, this is your season of convergence. The things that didn't make sense are clicking into place. The pain you thought had no purpose is revealing its instruction, and the time you thought was wasted is producing fruit that will nourish generations. Now let's do what heaven's been waiting for. If your spirit is leaping, if your heart knows this word is for you, don't just listen silently. Comment 999 below and declare, I am not late. I am right on time. My season is here. Because you're not watching this by accident. This was scheduled by heaven, and it's your time. God's chosen one. There's something you need to understand about your voice. It doesn't just speak, it shakes realms. You felt the resistance every time you tried to speak truth. You felt the tension when you opened your mouth and the atmosphere shifted. That's not coincidence. That's spiritual consequence. Because your voice carries weight in the unseen world. You are not a mere encourager. You are not just a motivator. You are a mouthpiece of heaven. And every time you speak what God has shown you, every time you pray, prophesy, declare, or even whisper in faith, you are moving things in the Spirit. You didn't ask for this. You weren't trained in this by man. You were born into it. You were anointed in the womb to carry language that liberates captives. And that's why the enemy worked so hard to silence you. He used shame to close your mouth. He used trauma to steal your voice. He used fear to convince you your words didn't matter. But heaven never stopped listening. Every broken prayer you offered was a strike against darkness. Every time you interceded when your own heart was breaking, the kingdom recorded it. And now, your voice is not only restored, it is rising with resurrection power. You're not just talking anymore. You're declaring. You're not just speaking from wounds. You're releasing fire. You're not just venting emotions. You're echoing heaven. There is a sound coming from your life that hell cannot copy. It's the sound of someone who survived betrayal, abandonment, spiritual war, and came out still believing. That sound has power, and that sound has assignments attached to it. You've been asking, Why do I feel this urgency to speak? It's because heaven is commissioning your voice again, not just for public platforms, but for private shifts. For the ones who will hear your voice in a hallway and feel chains break. For the ones who will read your words and weep without knowing why. For the ones who don't know how to pray until they hear you do it. And suddenly their soul remembers how. The authority in your voice is not in your volume. It's in your weight. It's in the cost you've paid to carry it. That's why you can't be silent anymore. That's why shrinking is no longer an option. That's why God is positioning you now in places that require courage, not credentials. Because what the world needs is not just another voice. It needs your voice raw, tested, purified by pain, and roaring with purpose. And as you speak, remember this: you don't speak alone. You speak as one backed by angels. You speak as one marked by fire. You speak as one who heaven has hidden and now revealed for such a time as this. This is your microphone moment, not for fame, but for freedom. Every time you speak, chains will break, mindsets will shift, hope will rise. Because your voice is no longer coming from fear, it's coming from revelation. Let those who once dismissed you hear the sound of your obedience. Let those who silenced you feel the vibration of your comeback. Let every demon that mocked your silence now tremble at your speech. You don't speak for applause. You speak for impact. And if your spirit resonates with this, if you feel something within you rising again, then let's stay connected. You're not alone in this walk. And there's a reason you found this message now. If it's spoken to your heart, consider subscribing. Not out of pressure, but so that you don't miss the words meant to continue nourishing your journey. You're also welcome to like or share this message if you feel it might speak to someone else too. And if you'd like, leave a comment below. Let your voice join others who are rising quietly but powerfully, just like you. This isn't just a video, it's a quiet gathering of the called, and you belong here, God's chosen one. How many times did you whisper, "Where are you, Lord?" Not with anger, but with quiet ache. Not because you didn't believe, but because you did. And in your belief, you expected to feel him nearer, to see him move sooner, to find him more visible in the storm. But instead, you found silence. You stood in rooms full of people and felt like the only soul alive. You carried burdens too deep for language, and when you finally found the courage to speak them out loud, there was no answer. Not in the way you expected, not in the timing you hoped for. And that silence wounded you deeper than the battle. But here is what you may not have realized. He was never absent. He was just answering in ways only faith could interpret. The moments you thought he was furthest away were the moments he was forming your deepest strength. The silence wasn't abandonment, it was invitation. An invitation to lean, not on what you could hear, but on what you've always known in your spirit. He is faithful. Look back, not just with memory, but with clarity. Who held your mind when it was unraveling? Who whispered peace into your chaos? Who sent the right word, the right friend, the right scripture, right when you needed it most? That wasn't coincidence. That was presence. It just didn't show up in fireworks or angelic visitations. It showed up in the ordinary, but it was always divine. There was that moment you almost gave up, and then something small held you together. Maybe it was a song, a verse, a stranger's kindness. Maybe it was just the strength to breathe and try again. That was him. That was proof. He didn't always show up the way you wanted, but he always showed up the way you needed. Not in the noise, but in the stillness. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not to impress, but to anchor. And that's what he's been all along. Your anchor, your keeper, your covering. You're still here not because of your strength, but because he never let go. Even when you questioned him, even when you stopped praying for a while, even when disappointment built walls around your heart, he stayed. Quietly, patiently, lovingly. And when the time was right, he began to peel those walls down, not with force, but with gentleness. He waited until you were ready to feel again, trust again, speak again. That's the kind of God he is. He doesn't force the door open. He knocks and waits. And now you can see it. The threads he was weaving, the protection he gave in the form of no's, the redirection that looked like loss but led to alignment, the waiting that built endurance, the confusion that birthed wisdom. You didn't lose years, you gained depth. You didn't wonder, you were being prepared. You didn't break, you were being rebuilt. And now, standing where you are, you realize something deep. He never left. He just loved you in silence. So don't be ashamed of your questions. God isn't afraid of them. He'd rather you bring your pain to him than pretend it isn't there. And every time you did, even in frustration, it was still prayer. It still counted. He still listened. Because prayer is not polished words. It's honesty. It's showing up raw. It's saying, God, I don't understand, but I'm still here. And that's what you did. You stayed. And so did he. So walk forward now with new confidence, not because you know what's coming, but because you know who is with you. You've walked through darkness and still believe in light. That alone is evidence of divine nearness. From this point forward, may you never mistake silence for absence again. You are seen, you are heard, you are held, and nothing can separate you from that love. God's chosen one. Let's talk about why you've always felt so disruptive. Why your presence alone can make others uncomfortable. Why people shift when you enter a room, not because you're doing anything, but simply because you carry something they can't define. That something is light. It's not the kind of light that simply brightens a space. It reveals what's been hidden. It disturbs what's been dormant. It awakens what's been ignored. And those who are not ready to confront their own darkness will always be unsettled by someone who walks in truth. You've probably wondered, why do people either draw close to me or distance themselves instantly? It's not your personality. It's not your past. It's your presence. You carry an atmosphere, one that was forged in silence, built in warfare, and matured through obedience. And now, without even trying, you disrupt the plans of the enemy. You may not always feel powerful, but your life tells a different story. Your prayers shift atmospheres. Your words cut through confusion. Your worship creates openings in the spirit realm. And your obedience, it breaks chains that generations before you never dared to touch. You were never meant to blend in. That discomfort you've carried your whole life is not a flaw. It's a sign that you were wired for impact. You weren't sent to confirm the status quo. You were sent to confront it. That's why they didn't understand you. That's why you felt spiritually loud in rooms full of quiet compromise. That's why you've outgrown environments that once felt safe. Because chosen ones are shifters. You don't adapt to atmospheres. You shift them. You don't hide from warfare. You recognize it and respond. You've seen this play out before. You speak up, and suddenly people withdraw. You walk in, and suddenly there's resistance in the air. You share a word from the Lord, and eyes narrow, not out of disagreement, but out of exposure. That's because the light in you doesn't argue, it exposes. And what's been hiding in comfort and silence doesn't like to be seen. But don't shrink. Don't dim your flame just to keep others warm. Don't dilute your presence to preserve false peace. Because you weren't sent to be accepted, you were sent to ignite awakening. There's a reason you're still standing after all you've walked through. You've battled with rejection, with misunderstanding, even spiritual attacks that made no sense at the time. But now, you're starting to understand. You weren't just under attack. You were under recognition. Hell recognized your light even before you did. And it's not just light, it's authority. You've been given authority in the unseen realms. When you speak, heaven listens. When you pray, angels respond. When you walk, ground is claimed. That's not arrogance, it's assignment. And here's the truth. Not everyone will celebrate your awakening. Some will feel convicted, others threatened. But a few those who have been waiting for someone to rise will see you and remember who they are. 2. That's what your light does. It calls out the hidden. It confirms the called. It reminds others they were never meant to live small. So don't second-guess your discernment. Don't apologize for being spiritually sensitive. Don't water down the fire that God has placed in your belly just because it makes lukewarm souls sweat. You were never meant to just survive. You were meant to set fires. Holy ones, purifying ones, fires that burn through lies, religion, fear, and passivity, fires that prepare the way for revival. That's why you've been through what you've been through. To carry this fire rightly, to carry it humbly, to know the cost and still say yes. You're not a problem. You're a precursor. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. But loneliness often confirms you're walking a narrow path, and narrow paths lead to wide open promise. So when the atmosphere shifts around you, don't pull back. Press in. When people fall away, don't cling. Release them. When you feel the weight of your calling rise again, don't run. Stand. Because God didn't anoint you for silence. He anointed you for disruption. And if you feel this word piercing through the noise, if something in your spirit is saying, "This is me," then take a breath. You're not crazy. You're not too much. You're not imagining it. You're simply walking in the fullness of what you were always meant to carry. Comment 333 below if you know the light in you has always made darkness nervous. Declarate, I won't shrink. I was born to shift atmospheres and walk forward in peace, not because everyone will understand, but because heaven already has. God's chosen one. Chosen one. There's something sacred about what you carry, something that cannot be copied, replicated, or imitated. You've likely felt it without having the words to describe it. That quiet, knowing that your voice, your insight, your very presence is not a reflection of anything you've seen around you. It is original, heaven-woven, unique by design. And that uniqueness, it's costly. You've lived with the weight of feeling like no one fully understands you. You've watched others walk freely into spaces that feel impossible for you. You've tried, at times, to model yourself after others, hoping it would make things easier, more acceptable. But every time you strayed from your divine pattern, something inside you began to dim. Because what's on you was never meant to fit a template. God didn't mass produce your calling. He handcrafted it. Your oil wasn't poured out from someone else's flask. It was crushed from your own process, your own journey, your own wilderness. Others may try to mimic your outcome, but they haven't endured your process. They didn't cry the tears you cried. They didn't pray the prayers you whispered through clenched teeth. They didn't stay up through the night, wrestling with callings too heavy to carry alone. That's why your anointing cannot be imitated. It came with a cost only you and God fully know. And when people try to walk in what you've been given, they'll feel it. It won't move the same, because favor cannot be faked, and weight cannot be borrowed. You are not an echo of someone else's ministry. You are not a mirror of someone else's voice. You are a blueprint. And blueprints are sacred. They are built once, for one purpose, for one structure. That's why comparison can be such a trap for the chosen. It tempts you to forget how rare you really are. You look at their pace and feel like you're behind. You look at their reach and wonder if you're invisible. You look at their platform and start to doubt your preparation. But let me remind you, God does not anoint copies. He breathes on the authentic. And you, in all your strange timing, in all your long waiting, in all your uniqueness, you are walking proof that heaven values original design. The enemy will always send temptation to conform. He'll whisper that if you tone it down, simplify it, fit in more, you'll be accepted, promoted, affirmed. But chosen ones aren't affirmed by crowds. They're affirmed by fire. And you've already walked through too much fire to forfeit your flame. Your story, with all its detours, with all its scars, with all its divine interruptions, is precisely what makes your oil so potent. You carry authority that didn't come from study, it came from survival. From saying yes when you had every reason to quit. From trusting when you had every reason to doubt. And that's why you must protect your originality, not with pride, but with reverence. You weren't made to fit the mold. You were made to break it. You weren't made to imitate. You were made to initiate. What you carry will open doors. No formula can force. What you carry will reach hearts algorithms can't touch. What you carry is born of the Spirit, and what's born of the Spirit carries eternal weight. So stand firm in your difference. Let it set you apart, not in arrogance, but in assignment. Let it remind you, every time you're tempted to shrink or conform, that you are walking in something sacred, something that can't be mass-produced, something that will outlast trends, likes, or applause. Remember, your authenticity is your assignment. Your originality is your oil. And here's what's even more sacred. God didn't just make you unique. He entrusted you with something that could not be replicated. Your perspective, your spiritual frequency, your rhythm of obedience. These are not side effects of your personality. They are signatures of heaven on your life. People might try to mimic your voice, repeat your words, or even adopt your style. But what they cannot do is carry what cost you everything to steward. What they cannot manufacture is the depth born from your personal altar. And that's why you never need to rush to defend your authenticity. It defends itself in the fruit it produces. There is a fragrance to what you've carried through trial. And those with discernment will know, this isn't imitation. This is original oil. And chosen one. You don't owe anyone a diluted version of yourself, just to make them comfortable. The fullness of your sound, your story, your soul is not too much. It's right-sized for your assignment. Don't shrink to fit rooms you were meant to redesign. Don't play small in conversations you were born to elevate. Even if they don't clap for you, even if they misunderstand you, even if they reject what they can't control. Stay true, stay original, stay anointed, because what's coming next won't require you to perform. It will require you to be fully yourself. The doors that are opening, they won't be impressed by replicas. They will open in response to recognition of someone who has walked with God, not just learned about Him, someone who has bled in silence and yet still chooses compassion, someone who refused to chase the crowd and, because of that, carries a word the crowd desperately needs. You are that someone, so lift your head. Shake the dust of comparison off your feet. Reclaim your pace. Refocus your gaze. You were never running their race anyway. And when you speak, speak from that place of truth. When you write, let it pour from the place that was once bleeding. When you pray, don't try to sound like anyone else. Heaven already knows your voice, and it responds to your tone. This world doesn't need another version of what's already been seen. It needs you fully yielded, wildly obedient, unapologetically different, because what you carry, no one else does. And that's the point. God's chosen one. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That subtle, steady shift. Something in the atmosphere is changing, not just around you, but within you. The tension you've lived in for so long, the weight that felt immovable, it's lifting, and in its place, there's an unfamiliar sense of readiness. You may not be able to explain it. Nothing obvious has changed. Your circumstances might look the same, but your spirit knows. A divine reversal is underway. This is the moment when heaven begins to flip what the enemy thought he had secured. The losses that marked your past are becoming the launching pads of your rise. The tears you cried in silence are being gathered into harvest. What was meant for evil is being transformed into the very thing that elevates you. Reversal doesn't mean going backward. It means God is turning the tide. He's taking what once oppressed you and using it as the stage for your emergence. Think of Joseph thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, locked in prison. For years, it looked like every step forward only led to another setback. But in one day, one divine moment, God shifted the script. What was meant to crush him catapulted him. What was stolen in secret was restored in public. That wasn't coincidence. That was reversal. And now, it's your turn. Your pit season is ending. Your prison of delay is opening. Your purpose is rising. God is not just restoring what you lost. He's reversing the verdicts spoken over your life. The lies, the labels, the limitations. He's peeling them off layer by layer and revealing the truth of who you've always been. Called, capable, and crowned. This isn't just emotional encouragement, it's prophetic reality. You've been through too much pain for there not to be purpose. You've been pressed for too long not to produce oil. The pain wasn't random. It was revelation in disguise. And now, the people who once doubted you are about to watch God do exactly what He whispered in the secret place. They will see the rise of someone they thought was finished. They will see the doors open without explanation. They will see favor fall where there was once rejection. But hear this clearly. You will not rise with resentment. That's not who you are anymore. You're not here for revenge. You're here for redemption. You're not rising to prove anything to man. You're rising because heaven said. Now, the reversal is not just for your benefit, it's for His glory. You will walk through doors you didn't knock on. You will receive blessings you didn't have to chase. You will carry peace that no one can explain. And when people ask, "How did this happen?" you'll point upward, because you'll know, it wasn't me. It was the God who reverses the impossible. But listen, don't resist what's shifting. You prayed for breakthrough. It's here now. But it may come wrapped in uncomfortable transitions. Let God close the doors He needs to close. Let Him remove what can't carry you forward. Let Him reroute you if necessary. Even if it doesn't look like elevation, trust the turn. Because when God reverses a thing, He does it thoroughly. He won't just restore your joy, He'll increase it. He won't just return what was lost, He'll multiply it. He won't just vindicate you quietly, He'll announce you publicly. And when it happens, you won't feel out of place. You'll feel aligned. You'll feel like you're walking in shoes that were made for you all along, because you are. So take a moment and breathe it in. The tide is turning. The storm is breaking. The silence is shifting. And your life is beginning to echo the promise that's been singing over you since the beginning. What they meant for evil, I am turning for your good. And you must understand, reversal doesn't mean going back. It means God is bringing things into right alignment. He's not taking you in reverse. He's taking you through divine justice. He is rewiring what was twisted, redeeming what was broken, and restoring what was drained from you. There are promises in your life that didn't die, they were just delayed. And now, in this season of reversal, God is reactivating what you thought had expired. Vision is coming back. Clarity is being restored. Your heart is beginning to beat with holy rhythm again. You're dreaming again. You're hearing again. You're believing again. And don't be surprised if things begin to shift quickly. Acceleration always follows alignment. What took others years may take you weeks. What once felt blocked will suddenly feel light. Why? Because you're no longer pushing against God's timing. You're flowing with it. So walk softly, but confidently. Move slowly, but surely. Don't panic when old things fall away. It's just God clearing the space for what's truly yours. And as you walk through this reversal, you will begin to speak differently, not with frustration, but with faith. Not with complaint, but with confidence. Because you'll see that God didn't ignore your pain. He was simply preparing your platform. There will be people who come back around, not to be part of your life again, but to witness what obedience built. Let them watch. Not for revenge, but for testimony. Because when God reverses something, even your enemies will have to acknowledge His hand. And that is what's happening. Now the hand of God is rewriting your chapter, not from the beginning, but from the very place where the pain left off. And what's next? Beauty, redemption, favor, peace. Let it come. God's chosen one. There are moments in the spirit that feel like breathing after a long time underwater. When all the striving, all the waiting, all the unanswered questions begin to ease, and a quiet knowing settles in. A knowing that your appointed hour has come. You may not feel any different at first. Life around you might seem just as ordinary, but deep within, something has shifted. The restlessness that used to visit you in the night is gone. The ache of delay has softened into peace, and the questions that once consumed your thoughts are now being replaced by a quiet conviction. I'm ready now. This readiness isn't about having all the answers. It's about alignment. It's about being in step with God, not running ahead in impatience, nor lagging behind in fear. It's about knowing, deep in your bones, that the timing isn't just right, it's holy. For years, You've walked through seasons that didn't make sense. You've watched others rise while you remained hidden. You've poured yourself out with little return, sowed in silence, served in shadows, and you began to wonder if your time had passed. But chosen one, your hour was never missed. It was being prepared. God has been shaping the space that your obedience will soon fill. And now, things are moving, not because you forced them to, but because the Spirit is releasing you forward. You are stepping into rooms that were always meant for you, but could not open until your character caught up to your calling. You are about to speak words that carry weight, not because you've studied more, but because you've lived through what you speak. You are being trusted with visibility, not for your sake, but for the sake of those whose breakthrough is attached to your yes. And all of this is happening not in chaos, but in clarity. You no longer need to hustle for attention. You no longer feel the pressure to prove anything. You no longer carry the insecurity that once clung so tightly to your identity, because you've been in the fire, because you've wrestled with the waiting, because you've learned that favor without preparation is a burden, and you are no longer burdened. You are ready, not in a boastful way, but in a reverent one, ready to walk without fear, ready to speak without apology, ready to embrace the momentum heaven is now releasing into your life. It won't look like a spotlight. It won't feel like a stage. It will feel like flow, like alignment, like doors opening you didn't knock on, connections you didn't chase, favor you didn't manipulate. And when it comes, don't hesitate. Walk through it, not with entitlement, but with humility, not with pride, but with peace, knowing that this is not about you being finally good enough, it's about the fullness of time. God isn't blessing you now because you finally earned it. He's blessing you because you've been faithful in the unseen. Every moment you chose integrity over approval. Every time you stayed when it would have been easier to quit. Every silent surrender. Every midnight tear. Every private act of obedience. He saw it all. And now he's honoring it. And still, you don't rise alone. You rise with grace, not in rebellion, but in release, not as a performer, but as a vessel. You're not just stepping into something new, you're stepping into what's been waiting for you. Custom built, heaven ordained, timed perfectly. And yes, the road ahead will still require trust. There will still be moments of stretching, but the striving is over. The proving is over. The appointment has come. You will sense it in your spirit before you see it with your eyes. But when you do see it, don't question it. Don't ask if you're worthy. Don't wonder if you've earned it. Receive it, because this time the oil flows. And if your spirit bears witness to this word, if something in you knows this is not just coincidence, but confirmation, then lean into it fully. Subscribe to stay aligned with words that remind you who you are in moments of transition. Like and share this message if it resonates with the call over your life. And when you're ready, comment 111 below as a prophetic declaration. This is my appointed hour. I will not miss what God has ordained for me. Heaven has already moved. Now it's your turn. God's chosen one. You've been sensing it, that gentle stirring, like the wind changing direction before the rain. It's subtle, but unmistakable, not dramatic, but deeply real. You're no longer just preparing, you're crossing over. There's something different about this season, not because of what's happening around you, but because of what's rising within you. You're responding to things differently. You're drawn to what once felt far. And you're letting go of what no longer fits, not with bitterness, but with peace. This is the sign that you've stepped into spiritual maturity. You're not chasing approval. You're not clinging to what's familiar. You're walking in alignment, and alignment always leads to advancement. You've outgrown rooms that once made you feel small. You've stopped waiting for applause that never came. You've started showing up as the version of you heaven always saw, even when others couldn't recognize it. This is not arrogance. This is awareness. This is what happens when identity roots deeper than insecurity. This is what it looks like to move, not with noise, but with knowing. And what's coming next will require exactly that. A steady soul, a clear heart, a surrendered pace. Because this next chapter isn't about doing more, it's about carrying more of Him. More wisdom, more stillness, more discernment, more fire, less performance, more presence. You're not building platforms. You're building altars. You're not seeking attention. You're seeking impact. And it's beginning to show in your words, in your walk, in your posture. People can sense the shift. Some will be drawn to it. Others won't understand it. That's okay. Your call doesn't require universal understanding. It only requires eternal obedience. And with every step you take forward, the weight of who you used to be falls off just a little more. You're no longer carrying the burdens you once thought defined you. You've traded those for mantles, assignments, authority, and quiet confidence that cannot be explained in natural terms. You're walking in what can only be described as divine rhythm. Not too fast, not too slow, just right. Because when God orders your steps, it's not about speed, it's about sequence. And the sequence has aligned. The path is clear. The moment is here. But don't be surprised if things begin to leave your life quietly. Certain connections, old habits, even old prayers. That's not failure. That's pruning. And pruning is not punishment. It's proof that you're about to bear more fruit. You don't have to force the next level. You just have to say yes to it. Because here's the truth. What's been chasing you is about to catch you. Not darkness, not fear, but fulfillment. The answers you waited for, the clarity you cried for, the peace you've longed for. It's coming. And not because you earned it, but because you endured for it. This is the fruit of obedience. This is the reward of surrender. This is the whisper of heaven saying, "Well done. Keep walking." And you will. Not for applause, not even for outcome, but because something in you knows this is what you were made for. So, don't look back now. Don't second guess what's leaving. Don't apologize for what's being birthed. Walk forward, lightly, boldly, because everything in this moment has been written for your good. And just ahead, new ground, fresh oil, deeper waters, all prepared for you, God's chosen one. We've come a long way, and yet, this is only the beginning. You've walked through fire. You've endured silence. You've obeyed in obscurity. And now, you stand at the threshold of everything heaven has whispered in your spirit. This moment is not about arrival. It's about activation. You are not just being encouraged. You are being commissioned. You are not just being affirmed. You are being anointed. You are not just being reminded. You are being released. The weight you felt your entire life, the sense that you were made for something more, the tension between where you've been and where you sense you're going, all of it has been leading to this moment of alignment. This is your time to rise, not just emotionally, but spiritually, mentally, prophetically, and as you rise, you do so carrying everything that tried to break you but failed. You rise with scars that shine. You rise with prayers that echo with power. You rise with faith that has been tested in darkness and proven unstoppable. The world will try to define you by what you survived, but heaven defines you by what you carry. And what you carry is light. What you carry is truth. What you carry is glory forged in groaning. And now, the mantle is resting on your shoulders. Not a burden, but a calling. Not a weight, but a witness. You've been chosen not just to feel this, but to walk it out. Chosen to speak when others stay silent. Chosen to intercede when others turn away. Chosen to lead in purity. To love without condition. To shine even when misunderstood. You were never ordinary. That's why the road was harder. That's why the lessons were deeper. That's why the resistance was stronger. Because the anointing on your life is not shallow, it's generational. It's not surface, it's territorial. You are called to disrupt, to shift, to build altars in dry places, and to carry fire into the forgotten corners of the world. And chosen one, this fire will not go out, not because you're strong, but because heaven has declared, you are mine. So, walk now, not with hesitation, but with holy certainty. This is your moment to say yes all over again, to dream again, to believe again, to burn again. You are not just one of many, you are a remnant. You are not just passing through, you are planting foundations. You are not just talking about revival, you are walking as a carrier of it. And if your heart is pounding right now, if your eyes are burning, if your spirit is saying, this is it, then you already know. Heaven is touching earth through your obedience. So say it boldly, not as a comment, but as a prophetic act. Comment 555 below and declare, I am rising. I am chosen. I am ready. Let every demon hear it. Let every delay break. Let every watcher see what happens when God calls someone by name and they answer. This is the sound of the remnant rising. This is the moment the earth begins to shift beneath your feet. This is not just your chapter, this is your commission. Walk forward. Chosen one. The heavens are open. Now take a deep breath. Chosen one. Let everything that has been spoken settle into the soil of your spirit. Don't rush away from this moment. Don't treat this as just another video, another word, another passing encouragement. This was a divine appointment. You didn't stumble here by accident. Heaven orchestrated your steps so that you would hear clearly, personally, powerfully what your spirit has been needing to hear for so long. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are not too late. You are seen. You are known. You are called. This is more than inspiration. This is activation. You've been marked for something bigger than survival. You were made to carry the weight of glory, to release light in dark places, to be a living reminder that God still speaks, still moves, still chooses those the world overlooks. So as you go forward from this moment, do so with a new stillness in your heart and a new fire in your bones. Let the weight of old seasons fall away. Let the whispers of the past be silenced, and let the sound of destiny rise within you. And if this word stirred something in your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe so you won't miss the next confirmation Heaven wants to deliver through this space. Share this message with someone who needs to be reminded of their calling. And finally, comment below if this word was for you. Let your agreement become part of the echo that tells the world, the chosen ones are rising. You've heard the call. Now answer it.